The left has declared war on the minds and hearts of our young people. As I see what's happening in our country, as I see what's happening in some of the textbooks and some of our schools, whenever I see the movies that are being put out by the left, whenever I see some of these TV shows, I see the left has absolutely 100% declared war on the hearts and minds of our young people. They are after our children. They want to do everything in their power to brainwash our children, and they do it through the eyes of entertainment. And a lot of times, unfortunately, parents, we will set our children down in front of a TV show and let them watch it for hours and hours and hours, or we'll let them scroll YouTube, or we'll let them watch, a movie, to where they just sit there 2 or 3 hours just glued to a TV screen. And the reality of it is our children are being indoctrinated by the left. It is a shame at what's happening. Reed, it's good to have you in studio today. I'm so glad that you can be with me. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that is very dear to my heart because I have 5 children, and I was a youth pastor for many years, and so I see, what the left is doing, and I see their end game and what they want. And so today, Reed, we're going to be talking about, how the left has declared war upon our children.
Yeah, and there's plenty to talk about here. You said it perfectly. We're in a war, to save the souls of our children, to save the livelihoods and the well-being of our children. I think that whenever it comes to the general culture war, I think that the fight for children is a fairly new addition to the overall narrative. But truth be told, this has been happening for a long time. Whenever I look at so much of what the left is doing, trying to groom our children in our public schools, trying to not just indoctrinate them, but basically just rewire them, reprogram them into these little Marxist foot soldiers. This has really been going on, for a long time. These are processes that have been a very long time in the making. I want to take us through a little bit of that history today, but before I do that, I want to just provide a disclaimer to our audience. So that's that some of the subject matter we're going to be discussing today is pretty doggone graphic. But the purpose of this show is to talk about how Christians, as Dan has very eloquently put it, how Christians can enter the public arena. Entering a public arena suggests that you're going in there to fight an enemy, but you can't defeat that enemy until you acknowledge that enemy exists and what their tactics are. So some of the subject matter we're going to talk about today, I think is going to be a little bit graphic. Other Christian voices out there in the world choose to avoid some of these topics for that reason, and I personally don't think that's the right approach.
Reed, I agree. And whenever you look at this topic in particular, that is one of the main reasons why we have God and Country, is so that we can have these type of conversations, but we also can encourage people, to get involved in and get engaged in the political arena, because so many Christians have left the arena. A lot of times parents don't even know what their children are watching. We just sit them down in front of some cartoon and let them sit there for hours, and they're not even realizing the indoctrination that is happening, to our children's minds. And so we as parents have to get tuned in on what's happening. And the left is not even being subtle about it anymore. At one time back, years ago, they would just be subtle, just insert things here and now. Now they have whole movies. They have whole sitcoms where they're talking about this stuff. And it's the star of the show or the hero of the show is some left-leaning, radical. Now they're even, try to get our children to come to libraries and let some trans get up and some trans dude get up there and a drag queen outfit and teach our children. They're not even being subtle about it anymore. They're doing everything that they can to demise, the home, to downplay the role of moms and dads, and to promote their ideology, which is, in return, brainwashing a lot of our children, where some of our children go to school, and they are pretending or they're acting like they're dogs or cats. It's unbelievable at what is happening, and it is the left. They are absolutely doing everything that they possibly can to brainwash our children, because they have declared war on our children's minds, and they want to take this country in a direction that I'm not just willing to sit back and let happen. And that's why we have God and Country, and that's why we're having these talks. That's why we're pushing for moms and dads and for people to let their voices be heard right here in the United States of America. We're not talking about things that are happening in another country. We're talking about things that are happening right here in America, and not in California even. I can understand California in some cases, but some of this stuff is happening right here in Mississippi, right here in Louisiana, right here in our backyard. And so that's why we have to rise up and say no, say absolutely not on our watch. And so we're going to get into some pretty heated or some pretty hot topics. But I want to encourage you to just stay tuned in and to listen, and don't take offense to what we're saying, but let it be a warning to each and every one of us. I have 5 children, Reed, 5 children. And my oldest is 16 years old. And my youngest is a little girl. She's 7. And between equipment, and I have David, he's 14. And then I have little Diana, she's about to be 13. And then I have London, she is fixing to be 12. And then I have Scarlett, who is 7 years old. And they have impressionable minds. And I have to be careful at not just the movies they watch, not just the TV shows they watch, but also the music they watch. Several months ago, one of the number 1 leading songs in America, and I feel awkward even saying it on camera. I don't even want to say it, but it was something that was trending on Twitter, trending all over the place. Was, I don't even want to say it because it's just so awkward for me to even say it, here. But it was.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It was nasty. It was perverted. That was one of the number 1 leading songs among our young people. And why is it? We put these singers at such a high, level, and our children look up to them like role models. And so they take some of this music, that is about gang violence. That's about raping people. That's about drugs. That's about shooting up, schools even and communities. Some of these video games, where these video games are they're running around in the neighborhood and they're shooting people. And even some of these video games, you could go into a school and shoot. Some of these video games, you could shoot police officers. You can steal cars. You could, go on a high chase from the police. And these kids think that's cool and that's fun. And we wonder why violence is running rampant. If you cannot scroll Twitter, you cannot scroll Facebook, you cannot scroll Instagram very long without seeing some type of violence. I was scrolling today, and there was a fight, big, huge fight over in Busch Gardens, I think it was. And I didn't read the whole story, but all I'm saying is you can't even scroll the news without hearing about a shooting over here or a fight over here at this school or this happening. And people say, why is that happening? Is it the guns? Is the guns the issue? No, I don't. The guns, they're not the issue. The issue are people. The issues are people. And people don't get overweight because of the spoon. They get overweight because of how they use the spoon. It ain't the fork's fault, that I'm overweight today. It's my fault. I choose to eat that pecan pie. With that, I'm just thinking about it. I'm starting to get hungry. That pecan pie with that ice cream on top and ice cream running down the sides because that pecan pie is hot. And drinking that, red top milk with it. And I'm getting hungry thinking about it. But my point is, it's not the pecan pie's fault that I get overweight or that my cholesterol's high. It's because I don't have discipline. And so whenever you look at our children and you see so much violence, what's driving the violence? Well, just check out your son's music.
There are going to be a bunch of Zoomers. I can actually hear them in the audience now. They're going to be screeching because they think we're attacking Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto 5. I can hear it right now. I think you're spot on there. Whenever it comes to a lot of the insidious ideas that our kids are exposed to, I think of it as though it begins in the education system.
Yeah.
But it begins in the entertainment system, and it's actualized, just brought to real life in front of their faces in the education system, right? I think that, we obviously want to get to what's in our K through 12 schools, some of the more grisly stuff in our K through 12 schools. But whenever it comes to whenever we look at where it is before it gets to the K through 12 schools, it's higher education, so-called higher education. It's colleges, it's universities. Just being the history guy on the show, I do want to take us a little bit back in history, not too historical. We're just going to the year 1984. So
I was 3 years old.
You were 3 years old
in 1984, yeah.
You don't look that old, man, if I may say so. I'm pretty surprised to hear you say that. But the year 1984, there was a cultural anthropologist named Gail Rubin. She's still around. Gail Rubin wrote an essay called Thinking Sex. Okay, so that's the title of it, Thinking Sex. And this is one of the foundational texts, or the foundational text, for an academic field called queer theory. Queer theory, if you have been so unlucky as to be an undergraduate college student over the last 10 to 15 years, you've probably seen queer theory programs. Maybe a minor, maybe just a few classes, maybe something as much as a major at some institutions in queer theory. Or if you're in the equally unlucky position of being a parent with a kid in college over the last 10 to 15 years, maybe you've heard about this as well. Queer theory is what happens whenever Marxism meets witchcraft meets pseudoscience. It is complete and total gibberish. I have slugged through a lot of queer theory academic literature so that I can sanitize it and break it down for our audience in a way so that they don't have to read this stuff at one point in the future. But to distill it, all of queer theory is about trying to subvert, trying to, as they say, deconstruct, trying to actually destroy what they consider to be the heterosexual family unit, the nuclear family, that stereotypical idea of a Christian middle-class family, one mom, one dad, a few kids. Queer theory is all about trying to deconstruct and destroy that, but doing so with an academic face. So I want to take us to the year 1984, because that's whenever Gail Rubin, this cultural anthropologist, released her essay called Thinking Sex. Now, there's a reason I'm lasering in on this specific essay, Dan. It's because this essay directly gave way to a lot of what we're noticing on a much larger scale today. So the inventor of Drag Queen Story Hour in 2015 actually pointed to this specific essay, as something that inspired her to create a drag queen or a story hour in San Francisco, which in my opinion is a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, I agree.
So in this essay, Thinking Sex, Gail Rubin explains just explicitly, she rails against laws designed to criminalize child pornography. So Gail Rubin, the author, this cultural anthropologist who authored Thinking Sex, was actually in favor of keeping child pornography legal for people to possess. She goes on to describe people she calls as boy lovers as victims of society. Boy lovers obviously being a euphemism for pedophiles, right? She goes on to explain how boy lovers are just victims of this heteronormative, white, cisgender, patriarchal society that we live in today. And that boy lovers, aka pedophiles, deserve more sympathy in the world in which we live. This is dark and insidious and disgusting stuff. Let
me get something straight real fast.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So in 1984, whenever this queer theory came out, are you trying to say that they're trying to normalize, back in 1984, the idea that looking at children inappropriately was okay?
So that has been their goal the entire time. So luckily, we are not yet at a point in our society where pedophilia is being normalized, but that's what these people have been pushing for all the way back in 1984, and they're on the record saying it. They're proud of it. In 1984, they were thrilled to be talking about how this was their goal.
See, whenever you mention that, and you go back to 2015, whenever this certain individual was trying to promote drag queen there in San Francisco, whenever you mentioned Sodom and Gomorrah. So let's talk about Sodom and Gomorrah for a moment. Sodom and Gomorrah was a very wicked place that the Bible talks about in the Old Testament, and how Abraham had his nephew there, Lot. One of the things that was just wicked about the area was the fact that there's several different things that were wicked about Sodom and Gomorrah. But one thing was that whenever these angels went down to Sodom and Gomorrah, they went to Lot's house. While they were in Lot's house, these men were pressing against the door trying to get into Lot's house and get at those angels because they were new men. They hadn't seen them before. So in their eyes, they was looking at virgin men. And that's what they wanted, was that virgin male. And so that's what those men in Sodom and Gomorrah was after. It was so bad that even had perverted Lot's mind, that Lot said, I'm going to give you my daughters, and I'm going to let you have my daughters. And these men were so perverted that they said, we don't want your... Now that's just perverted in itself.
Right.
That Lot was willing to give up his daughters to these perverts. But they didn't want his daughters. They wanted those male virgin men is what they wanted. Not necessarily to make lovers out of them, but to rape them, right, is what they were after. Just perversion. And whenever you're looking at what's happening in America today, you go back to 1984, then 2015, and then today you have you have these grown men dressing in drag in front of our children. You are right. They are absolutely trying to normalize this stuff to try to fit into their agenda at getting to this. It's filthy. It's nasty. It's perverted. And once again, it goes back to the left. And let's make this clear. This is 100% the left. The Democrat Party. This is part of their platform and their direction that they're trying to bring this nation. And that's why we as parents and we as Christians must be engaged and must be involved. They are absolutely trying to brainwash our children to thinking that this whole concept is okay. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to point out that about Sodom and Gomorrah, it was more than just these men were trying to lie with these men. They were trying to rape these men. And it's almost like the left today is raping the minds of our children. They are taking them in and they're brainwashing them into the fact that think that it's okay for another man to be up in front of you, shaking himself, and it's perverted. And that's why we have to push back against that mess and say, no, that is wrong, that is wicked, that is straight out of the very pit of hell, and that is not normal. Well, no planet should that be normal. I mean, I cannot even get myself to even comprehend mentally on any planet that should ever be normal to where you're doing that and pushing that and promoting that with our children.
Well, amen. As always, you hit the nail on the head. As we've both talked about this, I've had to take a couple of pauses and think about how to conceptualize it, much less how to articulate it on camera, because this is really grisly, nasty stuff. It seems like as recently as when I was a kid, there was at least some desire for the right and the left to reconcile or find common ground or work together on occasional policy issues, like during Ronald Reagan's term as president, right? There was Tip and the Gipper, right? It was Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, and despite the fact that they were in opposing parties, they were able to come together. Now the left has they've crossed an uncrossable line. They've done something that I don't think the right, that common sense people like ourselves will really forgive them for. Now I want to add another dimension to all of this if I can, from sort of an academic perspective, if I may. So for most of the 20th century, the left was really it was a progressive sort of ideology, right? It stems back all the way to the progressive era, Woodrow Wilson. Then it continued with political philosophers like John Rawls, right? I would say towards the end of the 20th century, and most certainly continuing now until today, the left is more predicated on Marxism. It has gone from a progressive movement to more of a Marxist movement. Every single way, and I mean every way, that progressives, so to speak, or that leftists see the world is through a sort of Marxist lens. And that's actually really important to understanding what's going on here with queer theory, what's going on here with the Drag Queen Story Hour, really understanding how these things came to be and how we can defeat them. So whenever we talk about Marxism, we're talking about, the philosophy, or let's call it the theology, the political theology, so to speak, of Karl Marx, right? When we read Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, it's not a very sophisticated piece of work, not really. You can read it in a couple of days, if you really sit down, put the effort into it, but it can be distilled down to something very simple, to a narrative that's very simple, which is that all of civilization, all of human existence is defined by the struggle between the proletariat, meaning most people, and then the elite or the bourgeoisie at the top, right? So Karl Marx, he talks about how class struggle really defines all of human history, right? So it's the proletariat, the vast majority, the working poor, so on and so forth, against the bourgeoisie or the ruling elite, right? So that's where we get the term like bourgeois. If a person is really bourgeois, it goes all the way back to Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto and some of his earliest writings. Somebody might be asking me, well, what does that have to do with queer theory and Drag Queen Story Hour? Well, I'll tell you. To no surprise, Gail Rubin, the author of this pamphlet that became the foundation for queer theory, which was the foundation for Drag Queen Story Hour, Gail Rubin was a Marxist. And everything that she writes about throughout this essay that became the foundation for queer theory and all this other sort of insanity we're talking about here was predicated on Marxist ideas. So Gail Rubin actually taught and believed that all of sexuality existed in a sort of pyramid or a hierarchy. And at the very top of that pyramid, of that hierarchy, was the sort of heterosexual, like married couples, that they dominated some sort of strange hierarchy. And then on tiers below that were other types of relationships, like same-sex couples, like gays. And she wrote that gays sort of existed on a second tier of the pyramid. It's like lesbians below that, trans people below that. And she said that at the bottom of the pyramid are pedophiles. They don't deserve to be at the bottom of the pyramid because blah, blah, blah. They're just victims of society and nothing they're doing is inherently immoral. That's the sort of warped lunacy that she poured into this document. So to break it down simply, her whole idea of how sexuality is treated in America, or really in the entirety of Western civilization, is that it exists in a hierarchy. At the top of the pyramid are heterosexual married couples, right? And then below there's like gays, lesbians, trans, everybody else, right? And her idea was that we need to invert that pyramid. That's the key part. She said we have to invert that pyramid. We have to deconstruct this idea that heterosexual married couples deserve to be at the top of this imaginary pyramid, right? And that's where this comes from. Fast forward to the year 2015, the city of San Francisco. A lady named Michelle T, I don't really want to call her a lady, but a woman named Michelle T, that's T-E-A, just like the tea that you're drinking right there. Michelle T, she invented, we'll call it invented. She organized the first drag queen story hours, which were tailored for children ages 3 to 11, okay? And this was, she was carrying on the work of Gail Rubin from her early essay thinking section from 1984. The idea was to give children the sort of real-life exposure to this sort of deconstruction of sexuality. This is just so weird to even talk about here. It makes me cringe. It makes my skin crawl even having to address it sometimes, right? But to give children a real-life exposure to the sort of ideology that Gail Rubin was pouring into her essay from the year 1984, right? That's the origin of Drag Queen Story Hour. Drag Queen Story Hour is about subverting that hierarchy, taking the heterosexual family unit off the top of this weird pyramid and making it so that that's not considered normal anymore. So the left has a term for this, heteronormativity. Heteronormativity is this idea that heterosexual couples are the basis for normal, which, for being realistic, they are. Dan, I have a question for you. Is there any kind of romantic couple that is capable of reproducing biologically, other than heterosexual couples, one man and one woman?
The answer to that question is a simple no.
Right.
Only a man and a woman can reproduce.
Were both of your parents men, or both of your parents women?
No, my dad is a man, and my mom is a woman.
But what is a woman? We don't even know what that is nowadays.
Well, it all goes back to, it's the left not just trying to destroy, that home, but why? The question is why? Why are they after the home? Because not only are they at war against our children and want to destroy our children, but they're also at enmity against God.
Yes.
And God, from the very beginning, did what? He formed a male and female. That's what God did. From the very beginning, put them in the garden, male and female. God created it so that the female is the one that can give birth, to a child, and that's when it takes a man and woman to do so. And from the very beginning, and they're just speeding it up now. They're trying to undermine and they're trying to destroy what God created. God created the home, they're trying to destroy it. God created the church, they're trying to destroy it. God created government, they're trying to destroy it. I mean, the three institutions that God created, Satan is coming in and he's using man, the left, to try to destroy, what God created. And so that's why you have happening what is happening, is because they're trying to brainwash our children, because they know in the future they're looking at, this is something that they do very well, much better than what we do. They're playing for the long game. Like they started in 1984, and then 2015, they're having their first drag queen show. And now look what we have in 2024. I mean, they're playing the long game here. We're talking about something that happened.
It only took them 30 years to completely rewrite the moral code of America.
Absolutely.
So your point about the spirituality behind this is on point as always. It is a rebellion against nature's God by attempting to overturn the natural order created by that God at the beginning of time. So they're taking the family unit, one man, one woman, children, dog named Spot, that nuclear family unit, right? And they're saying, oh, that doesn't matter. That doesn't deserve to be normal. That's just, oppressive. It's just puritanical. It's just, it needs to be totally done away with. And if kids want to marry whatever when they grow up, if they want to marry another man or another woman, or they want to engage in all these other sorts of degenerate acts, they ought to be able to do all that. We shouldn't have any morals whatsoever. So it's an affront to nature's God.
Absolutely. When you go back to Adam and Eve, they had one thing at the very beginning. They had their identity. They had a name. They had who they were. You had Adam, who was a man, and he had his name Adam, and you had Eve, who was a woman. Obviously, her name was Eve. They had their identity. They had their different responsibilities. They had their different roles from within the home. And so whenever Satan is coming to attack, what is the very first thing that he's going to attack, or beginning to really attack today? He attacks your identity. That's what he's after. That's why he has these children. He brainwashes these children and have them thinking, well, you're really not a male.
And he goes after the most vulnerable in society.
The children.
The children.
Absolutely. Because he starts after them now, and he's looking, because Satan, he knows his time is limited, but he's still playing the long game. He's still playing that, he starts going after the children now. Listen, you're not really a male. You're really a female, or you're not really a female. You're a male.
Or you're a dog, or you're a fish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then he even has in the education system where we're in schools, and you have this male who he thinks he's a female, so we're going to let him play in girls' sports. And so now you have our schools, they're pouring on it and allowing it. And I am thankful that in Mississippi, we have some very strong rules and laws about this, and we're not going to let boys play in, girls' sports, or even boys have, going to the girls' bathrooms, which is, that's a whole nother, that's just ridiculous with all of that. But you have Satan attacking their identity. And how does he attack it? He attacks it through sexual perversion. That's how he attacks, through sexual perversion. And so he's smart, and he begins to attack it through sexual perversion. And that's why you see on these TV shows, younger and younger. I know some of you are going to think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I probably am a little tad bit nuts. And
but sweet tea, man.
That's right. Too much. It's that 2.5 cups of sugar per gallon. That's what does it. And it's pure sugar. And so that's why you see on our TV shows, that's why you see on movies, it's getting younger and younger when it comes to sexual perversion. The rebellion, that is in these some of these YouTube videos. And I'm so thankful for the Midnight Ride, our cartoons that we have coming out, that are impressive, by the way, especially the last one that came out that just hit over 1 million views.
Oh, the Avengers cartoon?
Yeah, it's incredible. And I love it. I've shown it to a lot of people, and I've copied and pasted the link and sent it to some friends of mine. But, I'm so thankful for the cartoons. I love them. I think they're great. And some other things that, are coming down the pike, I think can really help, our children. Because the left is, they're not only are they smart, but they're good at what they do, right? You go look at some of their cartoons. They pour millions and millions of dollars into these things. These movies where they spend hundreds of millions of dollars, with some of these movies that they have. Our children just sit there glued, to the TV watching, and it becomes normalized to them, this sexual perversion. And so they start putting this stuff in. And I'm not saying every movie obviously is bad. I'm not saying that every cartoon is bad. What I'm saying is they'll let this smart, and they start putting this stuff in some of these cartoons and some of these movies. And so that's why we have to be careful at what we allow our children to watch. And we need to be careful at, letting our children watch certain movies and watch certain of these YouTube movies, because they start inserting that sexual perversion in to brainwash our children, to break down their identity is what they're after. That sexual perversion, and that's what it does. They start having these TV shows where they have this trans kid, as the hero of the show. It's normalizing that. That's what they're trying to normalize that. Or they have a TV show to where they're downgrading the role of the man in the home, and they begin to normalize that, where a child is just rebellious, in the home, and they begin to normalize.
The children are always smarter than the parents. The mom is always smarter than the dad, and the dad is fat, he's emasculated, he's lazy. Most of the time, he's a stay-at-home dad, and the woman's the real breadwinner in the house. It's a script that I've seen over and over and over again. Whenever I was a kid, not really that long ago, I remember seeing this same template put into like every show I was watching on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon. It was pretty common in Cartoon Network as well. And that's part of why, Jim Zagelski and I decided to put the Midnight Ride together, is because some sort of alternative, it has to be presented here. But you're talking about all these, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Marvel, whether it's DC, or whatever kind of fictional universe it is. So many stories, many of them are stories that are, decades and decades, generations old, are being told all over again, or revised or retconned in some sort of way to embellish, this leftist agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
His insidious leftist agenda. I think this touches on a very real point, that the leftist craving for power is so great, it is so infinite, that this universe cannot even contain it. Their craving for power is so intense and so vast that it pours over into fictional universes that we see through our screens, that we read in our books. So it's just an interesting thought to me that the universe we live in, that reality can't even contain the craving for power and utter control that these people have.
I agree. Talking about our children education, maybe a year or two ago, we had in St. Tammany Parish, where I pastor, there were some of these parents. They were at home with their children, helping them do some homework, and they picked up one of the books, that their child had for reading, to write a book report on. And this parent, the story that I was told, the parent just started scrolling through, some of the pages and started reading a little bit of the story, and they were just blown away at the story that this child was given to read, to write a book report about. Here in Mississippi. In Mississippi, there's a young lady who, she works with Moms for Liberty. Her name is Lindsay, and she lives up in the Jackson area, and she's really done a lot of work in this area of trying to protect our children, especially in the classroom, with fighting against some of these books, that are in some of our classrooms. And this one particular book was talking about, it was talking about rape. It was talking about, I'm talking about for 4th and 5th graders. It was talking about ejaculation. It was talking about, girls with girls and guys with guys. It was talking about, one with their uncle. I mean, talking about very perverted stuff, in these books that are in our Mississippi public school libraries. And thankfully, some of these moms are like, not on our watch. We are not going to allow this to happen. I know of many parents of St. Tammany Parish that went straight to the library and started taking some of those books out. They fought and they won, by getting a lot of those books out of our classroom. And the same thing happened in Mississippi. But what blew me away was that it just wasn't second nature to just go get rid of these books. Listen, I understand that sometimes people mess up. I understand that sometimes things could maybe slip in, without anybody knowing, and it's a complete accident. But I have a hard time believing that whenever this kind of stuff happens, that when it's this bad, that whenever the teachers or the school administration wants to fight against the parents to keep some of that trash in the school, I find that hard to believe that it happened by an accident. I think there's a school administrator or there's a teacher somewhere that's perverted in their thought process, and they are in themselves trying to steer those children down a path that they don't need to be steered.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The MyPillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, MyPillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took MyPillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented MyPillow to bring you the best pillow in history, MyPillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that MyPillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. MyPillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of MyPillow.
The MyPillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last MyPillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. MyPillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new MyPillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.
And so that goes back to, and I know feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but that's why I'm always going to mention. That is one reason why we have God a country, is because we're going to constantly fight for what we believe in. We're going to constantly push for moms and dads to engage. We're going to constantly push for you and I and adults all across America to be engaged in the political process so we can wave the flag and say, not on our watch, this isn't happening. You're not going to just come in and just brainwash our children. We're not going to allow it to happen. And so I'm thankful that in Mississippi and in St. Tammany Parish, that there were some moms and there were some dads that was willing to say, no, we've got to get rid of this trash. We cannot be allowing our children, we're talking about fifth graders. I mean, a fifth grade girl, going home and she's got to read this book, that is, that's perverted, and write a book report on it. First off, someone said, well, how come, that little girl, fifth grade, what are you talking, 11 years old? How come that 11-year-old girl isn't just going to go tell her parents? Well, she's probably embarrassed. She's embarrassed, to go talk to her dad about that, talk to her mom about that. She doesn't understand. And it's not her responsibility to do that anyway. There are to be some teachers, there are to be some parents that's involved in I know what my children are reading. I know what's happening in their school. We stay engaged and plugged in to know what kind of curriculum, that they're learning in school. So this kind of stuff doesn't happen, and so parents, get involved, get engaged, know what's happening. I know we're getting right to the end of the year as far as the school is concerned, but you have the whole summer. Ask questions. Go to your school library and talk to your teachers and say, what books are in, these libraries? And so stay involved and stay engaged and read. I have a hard time believing, that I have a hard time following the concept that I'm just going to let it be. Okay, I'm just going to bury my head in the sand and just let it be. And that can't be our attitude. That can't be our spirit. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I completely and totally agree with you. Much of what you said about what's happening in the state of Mississippi, I was unaware of that, but I do want to juxtapose it from something else I was reading. This was a couple of years ago. So we want to look at what happened in New York City in the year 2022. So maybe you heard of this, whatever it happened. The city of New York actually invested over $200,000 in taxpayer funds towards hosting drag queen story events in public schools in New York City. And that's utterly insane. It was that same year, actually this was last year, the Attorney General of Michigan said that there needs to be a drag queen in every public school in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
Okay, and then we look at the People's Republic of California again, the state of San Francisco. A member of the California state legislature, a guy named Scott Wiener, I kid you not, that's actually this guy's name. He said that he's talking about how we need drag queens in every public school because drag queens make everything better in public schools. So this kind of insanity is all the way across our country from coast to coast, not just in the blue states and a lot of the red states as well. So I think that I'm glad to live in a state like Mississippi where this kind of thing is being fought. That brings it back to the state level. I think that whenever it comes to fighting this stuff in a very practical way, I think we need to engage this on the state level of politics. When it comes to the federal government, even whenever we engage the process democratically, so to speak, we have very little control. Our member of the House of Representatives is just one of 435, right? And then you have a second chamber, the U.S. Senate, we're only 2 out of 100 there, right? So whenever it comes to the federal government, we have a very small amount of influence there, especially a small state like Mississippi, roughly 1% of the U.S. population. But whenever it comes to state government, each individual's level of action, every individual's engagement, yeah, it means a lot more. It's a much larger proportion of what's happening in this state. So I think that engaging the state level of government, there's a lot of merit to that. And I do want to give props, where credit is due. That was with Ron DeSantis. I think that Ron DeSantis has really been a model governor whenever it comes to fighting a lot of this insanity in the state level, particularly, fighting ESG, that is environmental and social governance. You might remember ESG was a very big thing because I want to take us back to college campuses. What a lot of people don't understand about why these sorts of curricula make their way into college campuses, seep their way into academia, is because of ESG standards. That is, once again, environmental social governance. So in order for these colleges to attain high ESG scores and remain eligible for certain types of loans from large banks, they have to maintain a high ESG score. In order to do that, they have to enact certain types of curriculum, certain types of curricula on their campuses. They have to hire a certain number of diversity officers and so on and so forth. So these colleges that are spreading this stuff are being incentivized by bad financial motives. Once again, going back to the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis did a very good job of fighting ESG in his state and running out companies like BlackRock, who are actually incentivizing this stuff, basically putting into place, once again, incentives for colleges, for private corporations to pass this kind of nonsense. So I think, the state level, there's a lot of merit to engaging the process and fighting back there.
I agree. And you mentioned Ron DeSantis. Listen, I like Ron DeSantis. I think he's been a good governor. I think he should not have tried to run for president. I think he should have waited until 2028. I did hear and I did read an article where Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump were in just some meetings together over the past couple of days, which I hope and I pray, that they are meeting and talking and discussing about how to get on the same page so we can defeat Joe Biden come November of 2024, just in a couple of months. And I hope to see Ron DeSantis come out with Donald Trump on the same platform, and let's work together to defeat Joe Biden. And so I like Ron DeSantis, and I really appreciate all the stuff that he's done in Florida. I think he's done good, and a lot of other things that he's done, I think he's done really well. I just wish he would have waited to run for president. Just waited until 2028, and I think he could have. I think this is Dan's opinion. I think if he wouldn't have ran against Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump would have probably picked him for his VP, most likely. And now, especially that all this stuff is coming out about Chrissy Noem after she's killed this dog or something.
Yeah, she shot a puppy or something.
Yeah, so and now she's trying to justify it, and I'm not sure what happened. But after seeing all of that, and a lot of people that was in love with her are now hating her. Ron DeSantis would have just walked right in as far as VP, in my opinion. And then I think that he would have walked right in 2028 as being president, because I only think Donald Trump's going to do one term. Speaking of that, I really wish that, Ron DeSantis and Trump would just get on the same page, get on the same platform. I really wish Nikki Haley would do the same. Just get on the same.
Nikki Haley's a lost cause, man.
I know, but I can only hope.
Joe Biden with a wig and an extra.
And I agree with that, but I wish that they would just get on the same page so we can defeat Joe Biden. And I read today, to where a new poll came out, a CNN poll, where Donald Trump was up 5 points against Joe Biden, and they said it was because of Kennedy, because Kennedy is taking a lot of votes away from Joe Biden. And because he's taking a lot of votes away from Joe Biden, he's hurting the numbers of Joe Biden. And they're saying that Kennedy is going to be to Joe Biden what Ross Perot was to Bush. And so I could only hope and pray that happens. And I see a lot of people coming out and supporting Kennedy, even right here in Mississippi. They're coming out and supporting Kennedy. And some people have asked me, Dan, why won't you support Kennedy? Well, a lot of reasons why. First off, I'm a Republican, and so I'm going to stand, with the Republican nominee. But then there's a lot of other issues, that, of course, we're not going to get into today, as far as the reasons why I support Trump over Kennedy, or definitely support Trump over Joe Biden, And so, but anyway, my point is, I wish that the Republican Party, those that was running on the Republican ticket in the primary, would come together and let's defeat, Joe Biden, because all you're going to get is more of what Joe Biden is doing on that national level. And I know what you said about the congressman as far as being one of 400 and however many it is, and then the Senate, you're two of, 100. But the thing about being a congressman or being a senator, and I know that Mississippi is a small population state, 1% of the total population of America, but could you imagine having, so say you have Ron DeSantis in Florida. Could you imagine having like a Donald Trump or a Ron DeSantis in the House? That platform is so much bigger, and they can really wave the flag of freedom and wave the flag of conservatism on a national level. And so that's one reason why, and I get the argument of 1 of 434 or 2 of 100, and I get that argument totally. But man, if we had somebody, and we have a few of them that are there, and they are on a national level, and we've had not very many from Mississippi. We've had a few, that was waving the flag of what we as conservatives believe. And so, but that's one reason why I push, I have a couple of friends in a couple other states. I've got one friend right now that's running for House Representatives, and we talked, and he's over in Georgia, and we talked, and he's like, should I or should I not? Should I run maybe for the state house, or should I run, for DC? I said, I think you would run for DC, because what's going to happen is it's going to give you a larger platform. And one thing that our good friend, Chris McDaniel always said, about running for office was that it's about the message. It's about the message, and the message of freedom, the message of liberty, the message of life, the message that we're broadcasting today. The message of, standing for our children, the message of standing against this wokeism that's trying to sweep our nation, the message against these, against these drag queens that are trying to come in and brainwash our children and turn their pure, innocent minds into trying to pervert them. Just having that message, and that message lives. If we can just change the mind of one person, to get them on the right track, to me, it's worth it. But I think we're going to change a lot more than just one mind. And that's why it's so important, to just continue to fight and continue to push back with our message. And so I'm sorry I got off on all that from the Ron DeSantis, from the Ron DeSantis thing. But when you mentioned Ron DeSantis, and he's done a great job in Florida. I think he's been a great governor in Florida. I think we have some great governors around the U.S. I really do. I believe that we have a lot of good Christians that are in office and that are fighting for what we believe in. I believe we have some good Christians in Congress, that are fighting for what we believe in, and which I believe is important, is very important. I think about the Public Service Commissioner, our Public Service Commissioner for the South, Wayne Carr. He's my second cousin. I think he's doing a great job, and he's a Christian, and he's standing for what we believe in. I think about Chris Brown up in the Northern District. He's a Christian standing for what we believe in. I think about the commissioner in the Central Park, Keith Stamps. He's a Democrat, but he's a Christian, and he is. I don't want to get him in trouble by saying this, but he's a good guy. He's a really good guy, and he believes a lot like we believe. About a man ought to work. If he's going to eat, a man ought to go to work every single day and work his job and take care of his family. He was in the United States Marines for 20 years, and so. All I'm saying is, I don't know what I'm trying to say, except we need more Christians to be engaged and be involved on every level, as you're talking about the state level, but also in D.C., being involved, being engaged, and let's take our country back. And I do believe it starts on the state level, and I believe it goes all the way to the White House. And we have a good chance, come November, to take the White House back if Christians will just engage and go vote.
I wish I shared your optimism about taking the White House back. It was 2020, the rampant voter fraud, and I think we could spend another episode on the voter fraud. 2020. That I could go on forever. That will definitely get us booted off of YouTube. I can promise you. But 2020 really shook my faith in the integrity, so to speak, of our federal elections, at least for a long time. So, man, I really wish I could share your optimism about what could happen in 2024. But we both know they're going to have these migrants, voting in mass, legitimately, or on paper, dead grandpas voting, whatever else, right? So I'm going to share your optimism about 2024, but I hope Donald Trump wins, obviously. But like I said, Ron DeSantis, whenever it comes to fighting ESG, whenever it comes to combating this stuff in public schools, he was fantastic. However, in Congress, the Freedom Caucus, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they've done a really phenomenal job at holding the Republican leadership's feet to the fire on a lot of things. I think we'd still be stuck with Kevin McCarthy if it weren't for Matt Gaetz. So I agree with you. We can't just totally neglect, the federal government, but there really is something to be said for taking control of the state, and really engaging government where it hits closest to home.
So when you talk about that, you talk about the elections, and to your point, whenever it comes to your state, there is nothing more local than being involved in your local party, and how the Democrats come in and how they steal the election is they do it on the local party level whenever it comes to these votes. And so that's why, and so I'm with you. It's important to be engaged and involved. I'm on the executive committee for Harrison County and for the Republican Party. And I mean, that's pretty local. I'm on the board for the Republican Club, and that's pretty local. And I get to go to state convention as a delegate. And so I would encourage you, all of you, to get involved in your local party, get involved in the local Republican Party, get involved in and know what's going on. And I know I had a good friend of mine sent me a text yesterday, and he's a friend, and he and I disagree on what I'm about to say. He's supporting Kennedy, and in my opinion, that's not the answer. The answer is not to leave the Republican Party. I don't believe that's the answer. I believe the answer is to stay and continue to fight for what you believe in. If you leave the Republican Party, all you're going to do is just give way to what you're fighting against. And there's a lot of good people and there's a lot of good causes going on in the Republican Party, but just get involved locally. And whenever you get involved locally, you can make a major difference, on that local party level, which I think is very important. Reed, I want to mention, or do you have something you want to say about that?
Go ahead.
I wanted to mention several. We're talking about TV shows a while ago. I want to mention several that parents really need to be watching and make sure that your children are not watching and stay away from. There's a TV show. It's about a teenager he falls in love. He's a young man, and he falls in love, and he comes out as a homosexual, and it's called Love, Simon, is the name of the name of the TV show. I would encourage you to keep your kids away from that show. There's another show. It's about a bunch of teenagers that are not just gay, but they're bisexual, and I mean they're exploring their identity. They're exploring their different types of bisexual relationships. That's called Riverdale. It's a very popular show among our teenagers. And so I would encourage parents, to keep your child away from that. You can go into these Netflix or these YouTube settings and you can fix it so your children cannot go into and watch, some of these TV shows. And even on our kids' phones, my son has he has a phone. But at a certain time, they got to put the phone up and he can't get on there. I mean, we have parental stuff on there, so he can't be logging into certain things. It's not that I don't trust him. I mean, I trust my son, right? But I got things on my phone, so I can't go look at certain things, to protect me and to protect my mind, and I'm 42 years old. And so somebody asked me, and I was talking to a young man about that. He said, Dan, do you have a problem with pornography? Because I told him I had like X3 watch on my phone and I had some things on my phone to help me so I can't go look at those sites. And I told him, he asked me the question. He said, do you have a problem with pornography? And I said, I do not have a problem with pornography. I never have. And the reason why is because I got the stuff on my phone to help protect me. And so I'm not addicted to pornography, not because I'm a good person, not because I'm a great Christian, because I'm a sinner just like everybody else. But I put things on my computer. I put things on my phone. I put things on my iPad. So I can't go to certain sites. And if I do, then I've got 3 friends that get an email, that says, hey, Dan went to this website. And my wife is one, and then I've got 2 friends that get an email. Why are they there? They're there to protect me. And so I can't just be protecting me. I have to protect my children. And so we as parents need to be making sure that on their Netflix accounts, and I don't know all of the different streaming, platforms, but I know Netflix is one, Hulu is one, then you've got Prime.
And Disney Plus,
you've got YouTube, you've got all these different accounts, and you can set it so that way they can't watch shows like Riverdale. So they can't watch shows like Euphoria. They can't watch shows like, The Fosters, or they can't watch shows like The Glee, or they can't watch shows like Sex Education, which is, it's a British comedy and it is perverted. They can't watch shows like, and I grew up with this one on TV, which my parents didn't have a TV when I was growing up, and about The Simpsons. It's just perverted. Whenever you watch them, you see some of that stuff. Like Family Guy, it's just perverted. South Park is perverted. Married with Children, It's perverted. Shameless. It's perverted. I mean, a lot of these TV shows, they are just perverted. Beavis and Butthead. I mean, perverted. And we watch that stuff and we think, well, it's okay for me to watch it because I'm a grown man. Well, that's fine. But this whole motto to our children, do as I say and not as I do, it doesn't work. And if you're going to be watching a bunch of perverted stuff, they're going to also be watching a bunch of perverted stuff as well. But they're going to take it a whole lot further. And I know some of you really think I'm crazy about right now, but that's just how I've chosen, to live my life and how I've chosen to handle when it comes to my home. I don't want a bunch of that perverted mess in here. You wouldn't let two, I say stuff like that and like, man, that guy's crazy. Yeah, but you wouldn't let two dudes come have sex on your couch, but you'll let them do it on your TV.
That's a good point.
And you'll watch it. You'd never let a bunch of dudes come in your living room and smoke a bunch of cocaine, but you'll watch it on TV. You'd never, so yes, I might be a little crazy, but I mean, there's just certain things that I think we got to be careful at what we allow in our home. We got to be careful.
Absolutely.
And
so
read
the following scenario. So
Read things
let's say
crazy.
no, yet. Well, we're both a little bit crazy, and this whole episode, I've been fighting 2 nights with no sleep, so I've been kicking myself, trying to stumble through some of these points and trying to drive home, but I think the show is going pretty good so far. Put yourself in the following scenario, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now, whatever. There's an anthropologist or an historian. They're trying to understand early 21st century America, and the only artifact they have to do that is the media that they would consume. They would probably come to the conclusion that America is 80 or 85% gay. Really, they would.
Correct.
If the only thing they had to go off of was
especially
media like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So there's a more humorous note, but a part of me is almost glad you didn't point out Rick and Morty, because I've liked Rick and Morty for years, but you're right, it is perverted, and
I've never heard of them.
Rick and Morty?
Yeah, I've never heard of them.
Okay, well, you're not going to be interested in it. I'm kind of interested in it because it's science fiction. I'm a big science fiction nerd, but it's one of those things I probably shouldn't watch anymore.
Hey, I mean, whatever you want to watch, listen, I'm a free speech guy. I'm a First Amendment, Second Amendment. I like the Constitution. Listen, if that's what you want to watch, you go for it. I'm just saying that we need to be careful at what we're letting our children watch. We just have to really be careful. And whenever it comes to any of this stuff, because we don't want our children, watching this whatsoever. And I understand. I get it. Whenever it comes to parents and moms and dads and all of those type of things, I get every bit of that. But once again, I'm not going to let a bunch of guys come in here and snort cocaine in front of my children. So I'm not going to let my children watch that on TV. I'm not going to let 2 dudes come, have sex on my couch. Well, I'm not going to let my children watch that on TV. So we just got to be careful at what we are allowing, whenever it comes to our children. Reed, we only have about 6 minutes left. And so I want to get into a little bit on how to protect our children, on what are some things, that we could do. And I know we mentioned several things today, like watching what they're watching on television. Stay tuned in, to what your children are looking at on their phone. These young people, especially these teenagers, they are so smart whenever it comes to technology. There are apps on their phone that hide other apps, so that way moms and dads don't know, what they're looking at.
Know that.
Oh man,
I had probably 500 apps on my iPhone, and I didn't even know that.
So I was a youth pastor for 17 years, and so there are so many tricks, these teenagers pull. They're very intelligent. I mean, they'll have an app on their phone. It'd be a camera, but it's not really a camera. It's an app to get into a bunch of other apps that they're hiding from mom and dad. There's all kind of things like that, and it could be a whole myriad of different types of apps. It could be an app that has the picture of their mom and dad, and it has their picture, and they click on that picture of their mom or dad or their dog, and it pulls up a whole nother screen to where there's a whole different type of other apps. And so, I mean, so you got to be careful. Not only are they trying to brainwash our children, but they're also teaching our children how to hide things from their parents. And so we've got to be smarter than them. It has to be more than just, I'm going to cut the internet off at 10 o'clock. That's good to do, but I mean, there's ways that they can get around that. And so when you're sleeping, they could cut that internet back on. These kids are smart, so we just got to be careful. So let's just mention a couple of things, to protect, these children. I want to mention one, and then I'll turn over to you. We'll go back and forth and just see how much time we have. One thing that I think is very important, I think this is probably the most important out of all of them, and that is keep an open communication with your children. It is so important that you communicate with your children, that you talk to your son and daughter. They are seeing so many things at school. They are being, not just on TV, but they are seeing so much happen at their school. They're hearing so much at their school that it's important that whenever they come home, maybe that ride home from school, maybe at the dinner table, maybe before they go to bed, maybe sitting in the living room for 15 minutes and just have a conversation, just ask questions, your children, how was your day? What happened? Keeping that line of communication open and starting it at a very, very early age. So whenever they do get to 15 or 16 years old and they do start having questions, they'll talk to mom and dad. What happens is moms and dads, we're so busy with life that we don't communicate with our children and we don't teach our children how to communicate with us. So whenever they get 15 or 16 years old, the only people that they've ever communicated with are their peers. And so guess who they're going to have the sex talks with? Their peers. They're going to learn about sex from some 15-year-old or some 14-year-old. And so it's important that us as parents, that we're communicating with our children and we teach them how to communicate to us. So that way when they get to 15 or 16 and something is said at school, some teacher says something or they read something in some book, that they're not scared to come and talk to mom and dad. They'll come home and they'll communicate to mom and dad and they'll say, listen, here's what I heard today. Here's what my teacher said. Here's what I read in my book. And we have to make sure that our children know that they're not going to get in trouble whenever they come home and tell us, And so it's important. It is important that we teach our children how to communicate to us. So that way, whenever something happens, whenever they hear something, see something, they will come and communicate to mom and dad. And so, Reed, I think that is very, very important whenever it comes to fighting against corruption and fighting against this left that is trying to brainwash our children, is teaching our children how to communicate with us. It is very, very important. How was your day to your child is much more than just learning about their day, even though you do want to learn about their day, but it is teaching them how to communicate to you, which I think is very important.
Well, I think that's phenomenal advice, and I love the fact that you're able to approach it from the perspective of a father of five children. I do think that, whenever it comes to protecting our children from this, it's about a lot more than just protecting them until they turn 18 years old. I think that whenever they're starting college, that's also a very important point, to really ask some serious questions, and that is, should they be in college in the first place? That's probably one of the major questions I want to ask, because if a young person is going to college simply because they don't know what else to do, they're going there rather aimlessly, with no real ambitions in life, they're going to be extremely susceptible to everything that we've talked about in this show. Those are exactly the kinds of young, malleable minds that these Marxist professors and these maniacs and these college administrations, that a young person like that is exactly who they target. That's exactly who they look to turn into their next Marxist foot soldier, right? So I think whenever it comes to, the coming of age moment, whenever your 16 or 17 or 18-year-old is asking what they're going to do with their life, whenever you're trying to figure that out with them, I think, college is something that really, to me, if I had a kid of that age, I would say, well, is there a reason you want to go to college? I mean, or do you want to be a doctor? Obviously, college is in order. Lawyer, obviously. Yeah, engineer, obviously, right? But for most other professions, actually in most cases, I would say there's really no need for college. And whenever it comes to, probably the majority of professions today, all the knowledge that you need can either be learned in a trade or can be learned online. It can be learned on the internet. You can read about it or watch videos about it. You have an unprecedented amount of information at your fingertips. So that with a few strokes on a keyboard, you can learn anything you want to learn. Really, it's a treasure trove of knowledge. The internet is that for thousands of years it's just something that would have been unimaginable to generations past, and we have it today. So I would say college is something that I would take a very strong second look at. If I had a kid, 16, 17, 18, they're trying to figure out what their next step in life is. I think, it's a little bit cliche to say this, but there's a lot of merit to going into the trades instead. You get to avoid a lot of that nasty student loan debt. There's a lot more job security with it. It's much more practical. It's much more useful in the long run. So, if they have to go to college, make sure that they're mentally well guarded enough to fend off the sort of Marxist indoctrination that's going to be inevitable once they get there.
Reed, that's very good. I like that. That's really good wisdom. And hopefully parents will really take that. I know I will. I'm going to take that and use that. That's really good. Thinking about college. I want to say thank you for tuning in. And we are out of time today. And we need to come back and hit this, some more of this again. Talking, because I've got a lot of things written down about how we can help protect our children. And so thanks for tuning in. If you appreciate or if you like our show, one thing that helps us is whenever you share. Whenever you share the Midnight Ride on X, whenever you share it on Facebook, whenever you share it on YouTube, that really helps us. Go check out the cartoons. They had a cartoon just launched. Go check it out. It just broke 1 million views. It's awesome. Go share it. Let your children watch it. I'm telling you, they would appreciate it very much. Once again, Reed, thanks for joining me. I've enjoyed the show and looking forward to next week. And in a couple weeks and two episodes from now, we're going to have our very first guest on. We're not going to mention who it is, but I am looking forward to having them in studio. So once again, Reed, thank you, and God bless you, and God bless the great United States of America.
Hey guys, it's Reed here. I don't say this about a lot of people, but I have to say Mike Lindell is a real patriot, and we could not be more thankful to him and MyPillow for sponsoring today's episode of God and Country. Remember, go to MyPillow.com and save huge on a great night of sleep by entering the promo code Midnight Ride. Thanks.